transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Joining us now is E.J. Antony, Chief Economist for the Heritage Foundation. So E.J., good afternoon. To start off, I just want to ask you, for our viewers who may not be very familiar with this situation, explain for us what is Lloyd's of London and why and how much are they raising risk premiums?
Sure. It's essentially a very large insurance brokerage based out of the United Kingdom, a very old establishment. And the reason they are having to raise their premiums so much is because premiums are ultimately based on risk. In other words, what are the odds that the person with an insurance plan is actually going to have to file a claim? And not only what are the odds of the claim, but how much will the claim be? In other words, how large will the damages be? And what Lloyd's of London is seeing right now with the war in Iran is that the odds of losses as ships traverse the Strait of Hormuz right around Iran, the odds are incredibly high right now. And we've already seen damages as a result of the war. And so if they're going to insure vessels, they're going to demand incredibly high premiums to compensate for the risk because they're having to make up for an increased likelihood of very, very large payouts. These are not, these are not recreational vessels. They are incredibly expensive vessels, and because of their size, they're carrying an incredibly expensive amount of cargo. So again, with the increased risk is coming increased insurance premiums.
So EJ, technically speaking, the waterway is still physically open. So talk to us about how have the actions of Lloyd's of London impacted companies or traffic through the strait, despite it being open?
Well, it's certainly open in one sense. It's not as if Iran has built a literal physical wall or some other kind of barrier. But you have to ask yourself, is it worth the risk of trying to traverse the strait? And a lot of people right now are saying, no, it simply isn't. And some of that, you're right, does have to do with the fact that the insurance premiums, again, have gone up so dramatically that people are saying economically it's not worth it. But a lot of other individuals and businesses continue to make the assessment that regardless of whatever the insurance costs are, because let's not forget some firms are so large that they self-insure, in many instances they're saying, no, it's just simply not worth the risk, because if Iran or anybody else is lobbing a missile into that area and it happens to hit one of our vessels, the losses there can be pretty catastrophic. Economically speaking, obviously there's going to be the loss of life, which is tragic associated with that as well. So again, it's not as if you need a physical blockading of the strait to effectively shut down commerce.
Okay, EJ, if I may, I want to focus a bit more now on what President Trump is doing in response to this. President Trump's move to instruct the U.S. Development Finance Corporation to provide coverage. What are your comments on that?
I think it's an incredible risk for taxpayers. Look, it's one of those situations where the president is making he's making a real gamble here. If they insure all of these vessels and absolutely nothing happens and everyone traverses the strait safely, well, in that case, you have premiums going to the Treasury, more or less, and because of that, the president is going to win, the administration wins. No harm, no foul. But if anything does go wrong, the American taxpayer is now on the hook to cover a tremendous amount of damages. So again, I think the only way you can look at this is that it's quite a gamble by the president. Remember, companies like Lloyd's of London have a profit incentive. If there is a financial incentive to insure these ships at reasonably low prices, then the private businesses would be doing it anyway, but they're not, because the risk is so heightened right now.
So EJ, if an incident does occur in this waterway, what are we looking at in terms of payout for the insurance?
Well, it depends on the plan, and it can really run the gamut there in terms of how much the cargo is actually going to be covered, and then the vessel as well. Are we talking about replacing a vessel with a brand new one, replacing it with a like piece of equipment? In other words, if the vessel's 25 years old, there's going to be a big cost difference in terms of replacing it with a brand new vessel or a similar vessel of similar vintage. So it really depends there in terms of cost. Also, what kind of cargo is being carried, right? If you look at the cargo exiting that region of the world, it's primarily energy. It's going to be LNG, it's going to be crude. In terms of the cargo coming in, it's going to be refined energy products. So think gasoline. It's going to be foodstuffs. So it can really vary tremendously just what is on the ships. Obviously, if you have a dedicated piece of equipment like an LNG tanker, it's only carrying LNG and it's carrying it one way. But when you're talking about a cargo ship, again, depending on what's on that vessel will really impact how much the vessel is going to be insured for and what a potential payout would look like if, heaven forbid, that ship is sunk.
So you're saying that the taxpayer could be on the hook for a lot of money. Are we talking about 6 figures, 7 figures, any ballpark?
Oh, it's easily, you're easily looking at plans that are $1 billion or more. Not every plan, obviously, but that can very easily be the case. Again, these are very, very large vessels. This is not some kind of small recreational craft, right? That we're talking about here. We're talking about ships that, for example, they displace far more water than any kind of like World War II era ship ever did. So these are very, very large, very expensive pieces of equipment, and because of their size, they're carrying very large volumes and therefore very expensive amounts of cargo.
Okay, EJ, thank you for talking to us today. It's been a pleasure.
No, pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me.
A federal trade court with exclusive jurisdiction over